Welcome to Xcelerate with Shawn Redford. The Xcelerate Xcast is designed to provide exterior agents with simple, repeatable, and profitable strategies for you to grow your business. We will share ideas on how to identify ideal target markets and new opportunities, improve your conversations with proven scripts and storytelling, and finally, we'll also meet with industry experts and our partner companies to ensure we're up to date with the newest technology and insights, all so you're able to accelerate your growth. We hope you enjoy Xcelerate with me, your host, Shawn Redford. Today we have Micah Neale, Regional Sales Director at Desjardins Insurance. With over 25 years of experience in the industry, Micah has made a significant impact in helping advisors expand their knowledge of insurance products and effectively solve problems through strategic solutions. Micah holds an alphabet soup of designations: CIP, CLU, CHS, PCS, CFSB. Over his career, he's been a national living benefits specialist, so who better to help us talk about critical illness insurance today than our good friend from Desjardins, Micah Neale. Here we are again. We are looking at marketing campaigns for September, October, November of 2022. And as you've all been made aware, critical illness insurance, disability insurance, and ensuring the lives of children are the three campaigns that we've been focusing on, hopefully, so you can hone your skills, become process experts, and ideally have better conversations with your clients and prospects leading into these fall and winter months. Today, I've got Micah Neale with me from Desjardins. And we're going to be talking about critical illness insurance. And, I think I'd like to start off, Micah, by asking you a question about how you became interested in living benefits. In our conversations up until this point, I've learned that you've got quite an extensive background in living benefits. And so I'm just curious, how does somebody get excited or have the passion to want to focus on living benefits coming into this industry?
Yeah, Shawn, thank you. You're right, because most advisors come in from the life side, not from the LB side. But for me, it was part and parcel of my father, who was in the business, who actually used to do a lot of disability. He worked for a company that was very heavy DI focused, and then ultimately living benefits. So I would see him going out. And when I first got licensed, actually, I got just my A&S license. So I was only selling living benefits. So that's where I kind of got my, root spot from to get into living benefits. Was I only could talk about DI or CI. So it was kind of passion. And then knowing what CI, mostly it was DI first. And of course, when CI was introduced into the Canadian market space, that became something that I dug my teeth into as well, because it was like, oh, this is really cool, a new product, something different, similar to DI, but similar to DI, but a little bit different. So it was just out of necessity and need. I would walk around, I'd see guys up ladders, and I'd wait till they come down before I talk to them, not when they were up on the ladder. And, I talk to them, what happens if you fall? What happens if this happens? So it became very natural. And again, following in my father's footsteps, it was in the business. I guess I kind of got naturally from him as well. And I would turn to him and I would ask him, I was out today in this situation, and how would you handle that? And he got to the point where he said, listen, you've been doing this longer than me. Now you have your designations. You probably could tell me a thing or two. So that's kind of where it happened. And it just, the want to share my experiences and teach others and show them how you can talk about it. One thing, Shawn, that's up for me was, when we got our license, it says a life, including accident and sickness. And I say to advisors, you're licensed, just talk about it. You've gone through the exams, you've gone through the tests. So, you talk about life, but what about the other stuff? Let's make sure we talk about it. And I want to make them feel comfortable about talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, so you had a teacher at home, you learned firsthand.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, as we've noted, very few advisors and agents are actively selling living benefits products for a number of reasons. I mean, the common objections that I hear are, it's too expensive, right? And it's too hard to underwrite. My clients don't qualify for it,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
How would you overcome those objections?
Well, the first thing I would say is it more expensive the other way if you don't have the plan in place, which is more expensive, having coverage that the insurance is covering you for, or not having a plan? I think, if you calculate it out, it'd be more expensive on the other side. But again, no, I know, Shawn, you and I have talked about this. I would, say to them, listen, who do you know? And I know, Shawn, you're a big supporter of this one. who do you know who's recently had a brush with the living benefits, have a brush with cancer, heart attack, stroke? Tell me about it. What was it all about? Did they have to take time away from work? Did they have a struggle? Did they have to sell their house to make ends meet? All this stuff, right? So, try and paint the picture, and then you get that golden ticket where they say, well, actually, yeah, I remember now they were off work for almost a year, and they did have to downsize their house. I remember that now, and I never really thought about it, but it's probably why they had to do it.
And what about underwriting? I've heard people like Keith Leach and other experts in the critical illness field talk about the underwriting obstacle and how this product was actually designed for healthy people, because it's the
Absolutely,
healthy
and
people that are going to
sure,
survive that life-threatening scare,
sure.
but their life is going to be changed forever. So how do you deal with the objection that so few people potentially can qualify for this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's other obviously carriers that do have guaranteed to issue stuff and are a little bit more flexible. We have a pretty good pre-screening guide, and obviously looking at it from the eyes and the lens that we do want to insure people. But obviously we got to adhere to our guidelines and our practices. So we try and work with them if it's a matter of a time thing where, okay, we can't do it this year, but maybe in 6 months or a year because that threshold's passed, that timeline's passed, that stability period's now there. Let's look at it again. So we obviously try and look at that. Some of our products asks for two or more family members, so we can kind of get around it that way because some of the products ask for one or more family member with history, and some
Hmm.
ask for two. So if it's only one family member, then we got a little bit of an advantage. But it really comes down to getting to them hopefully before something's happened or before a family member. And at least if we can't insure you, maybe we can insure another family member. I mean, sometimes it's a case of insuring the healthy spouse at least while they're healthy, or partner or family member. So at least they have something in place if something happens to them.
Yeah, great point there. Getting to them while they're still young and healthy. I mean, we talked about that. Thank you. Last week, you spoke about on our Product on Thursday presentation about insuring children with
Hmm.
critical
Hmm.
illness insurance, hopefully long before any impairments, become an issue for them. So it's a great point. So I'll, paraphrase what you were just saying. First of all, have a conversation with the clients and find out what their health history is, what their family history is. Find out if there are any impeding factors that could make it difficult for them to qualify for the coverage. And if so, it's good to know that there are products out there that some are more lenient. So some carriers ask for two family members like you versus one
Hmm.
family member with medical history, or there are simplified and guaranteed issue products out there as well. So do your due
Absolutely.
diligence up front, do some field underwriting, they call it, right?
Yeah,
Field underwriting
absolutely.
to find out if they're insurable before you take the step and apply for that coverage, because nobody likes to get rejected, right?
Absolutely. And Sean, we've talked about this before. I think one of the things that you and I love as well is the fact that this was designed by a doctor. I
Mm.
love the fact that CI, the late Dr. Maris Bernard, and I think I shared this a little bit of history. The first policy was written 40 years ago in 1983. So it's not a brand new product. I mean, it didn't start here. It was obviously born in South Africa, came to Europe, came over to North America, finally made its way here. And it's interesting because I remember talking to a young lady in Calgary many years ago. And she talked about coming from England, where they sell life and CI as a bundle. And she talked about all the conditions, and she made it sound like there was more than the usual 25, 26. And it wasn't until 2 days later I thought about what she said, and what she was talking about was all the sub conditions. So you've got like your cancer, but you've got a bunch of cancers. You've got your heart attack, stroke, dementia, all this stuff. So it really has become not just the core 26, but there's a lot of secondary or third level protection under there. And children, yeah, I mean it's so hard for an advisor to speak to a parent about life insurance. But critical illness is another thing. And the reality is, Sean, as you know, if the parent has CI and the child gets sick, it's not going to respond. You need the child to have CI coverage as well so that it will respond. And what parents don't think about is all the other things that come along with it, like, taking time away from work, the extra expenses, all that good stuff. So there's a lot of, secondary and third things to think about when it comes to it. Now, CI for children has evolved, and it's great now because it not only covers the adult conditions, especially with us, with Desjardins, there's 306 additional childhood illnesses, they can get covered as well, depending on the age of when the child comes into the plan. And I know we spoke about this program, and there's 6 in total, but the 2 that resonate, I think, the most with parents is autism spectrum disorder and type 1 diabetes, which is, you know, a big factor and comes along with a big cost for parents as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, you know, one of the biggest challenges for our advisors is just opening up the conversation, right?
Sure, sure.
They're accustomed to talking to their clients about their retirement plans or comparing their mortgage insurance through the bank to traditionally owned or personally owned
Sure.
life insurance. But oftentimes they have a challenge switching the conversation, changing gears, and talking about living benefits. Have you heard any ways or strategies to do this from some of the other agents you've been working with over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides the one we talked about before, it's a who do you know that's recently suffered the following and, you know, how did it affect them. But it reminded me actually of a story. It was a few years back when I was speaking to one of my colleagues in Edmonton, and he was at a family gathering, and somebody was asking, you know, how are you doing? How's things? He was a wholesaler like myself. And he says, you know, what do you talk about with your clients, meaning the advisors? Well, you know, life insurance and CI and DI. He said, CI, what's that? Because again, we get stuck on, we call it CI because we don't, right? Critical illness. And I say to advisors, critical is a very strong word. You know, if you're, you know, an advisor in Ontario, for example, and you have an accident on the 401 or the 403 or the 410, 427, all the fours, and the person's in critical condition, sounds like they could be on death's door. So it's a very strong word. But anyway, he was telling them, and he said, you know, it covers for cancer, heart attack, and stroke are the big 3. And as he's saying this, his cousin was talking to the gathering, had this perplexed look on their face. He's like, what, do I have some food on my face? He goes, you can get coverage for cancer? When did that happen? The reality is, us as advisors, we're not telling people there's coverage out there for this. People still don't know to this day. So I
Mhm.
remember being at a PD day many years ago where we had the fortune of having an oncologist come and talk to us. You know, it's funny how things stick out in your mind. Underwriting session was one, oncologist was another. And the oncologist says, when I diagnose a patient, the test results are positive. You can imagine they're going to go through a range of emotion. And I sit back as the oncologist and hopefully have a loved one there, and I don't say a word until they re-engage me. But one of the things I ask them is, you know, I've got a couple of ways we can go with treatment. We can go the government level, or if you have private stuff, we can go up here. And the reality is, do you have that? I remember things even a doctor who was insured many years ago would tell all his patients, boy, was I glad I had, ready for this amount? 50,000 in CI, just 50. Wasn't a lot, wasn't big bucks, wasn't a ton. 50,000 allowed him to keep his practice open, step away, focus on his health, and then make it back. So the reality is things happen. I think the other thing too is obviously what's been happening over the last couple of years in the world, without getting into that, obviously it's really put CI in the forefront. We know from LIMRA that there was 2 products that was sold more than any other, or should we say protection, life and then CI. Everybody
Mhm.
wanted it. They realized, oh, hang on, I didn't know about this coverage. More and more advisors started talking about it, thankfully. But it's just a matter of opening that conversation. You know, who do you know? Do you know? And again, you can use stats. Do you know the chance of this happening? Do you know the chance of that happening? You know, if that happened to you. The other thing I heard, which is really good, is someone mentioned to me, is if they're going to position CI, they would say to them, listen, say to your client, tomorrow you get diagnosed with a serious illness. It's going to take you out.
Mhm.
Give me 3 things you would want to see happen. You don't have them in place today, but I'm going to waive my budget 1 tomorrow when you're diagnosed, and I'm going to give you 3 once. What would you want to see happen? And you let the client say those 3 things. Well, you know what?
Mhm.
They're going to say, well, money for this. I want to be able to do that. I need money for treatment. Boom. They've just sold themselves CI.
Yeah,
Right? Just
very
asking what their
good.
3 wants would be, right?
Yeah, what would your 3 wants be should you be
Diagnosed
struck
with a
with one of
serious,
these
yeah, or have
illnesses
a
tomorrow?
stroke or heart attack or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Okay, so then on that note, why don't we talk about identifying prospects? How do you
Sure.
know who to talk to about critical illness insurance? And I'll say one thing, one golden nugget I learned a long time ago from a colleague in the industry was the number one purchaser of critical illness insurance was a single female healthcare practitioner. And
Sure.
what reminded me of this just a second ago was when you were talking about that oncologist.
Right.
And the interesting thing is these healthcare practitioners, whether it's an oncologist or a physiotherapist or a massage therapist, they see the result, the impact of these life-threatening illnesses every single day. They see both the emotional as well as the financial
Hmm.
detriment to the family or to that individual when they are diagnosed with such an illness. So obviously they're a prime target. Who else do you talk to though about critical illness insurance?
Well, they were missed, and I think my boss would give me a hard time if I didn't say everybody. I mean, everybody's a candidate, right? But obviously, like you said, CI is underwritten a little bit differently to life, so there is a bit of a health, obviously a strong health aspect, budget obviously as well, and been impacted. But you're right, when you go back and you look at, the reason why Dr. Maris Bernard, went to the insurance companies in South Africa and shared his vision of an insurance that didn't pay out on death, but on diagnosis of a serious illness, so the person could step away. The reality is when you tell people, do you realize how much government plans cover and don't cover? We know what's covered and what not covered. And then, if something happened to you, no matter what that is, one of the 26 conditions will say, what kind of treatment would you want? Would you want just the basic coverage, or would you want to be able to pick and choose where you went, what you treatment you had, all that kind of stuff? So it's
Yeah.
the reality of talking to them if they're not familiar with it about what it can do for them.
Yes.
What it can provide, a tax-free lump sum payment for them to do whatever they want with it. You can offer them suggestions. Obviously, you could do this, could be used for that, could be used for this, so they know. And then, the beauty is, of course, with a lot of CI is return of premium. So if they
Mhm.
don't use it, they get their money back. So, they love to do that with other insurances. We won't get into that, but with other insurances, they pay year after year after year, and they don't see their money coming back. This is one where they actually will see their money coming back. So it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of opening that dialogue. What again, like come back to what would happen to you and what would you want to see happen? Would you want something in place?
Yeah.
What kind of provisions have you put in place so that this happens to you, that something's there for, whether it's going to be obviously care for the children, treatment, modification of the home, whatever you need kind of thing.
And I think that's the key is helping clients understand what they could use it for. Back 20 odd
Absolutely.
years ago when I was first learning about critical illness insurance, all that we were told was you're going to use this money to jump the queue, jump the line in Canada and go down to the States for better treatment. But I found oftentimes that our coverage and our benefits was so good in Canada and Ontario in
Hmm.
particular that
Hmm.
it would lead to objections because people would have had great experiences in the past. But I think what Dr. Barnard did so incredibly well was, well, first of all, he created it instead of an insurance company. If we did it, we probably would have screwed it up. Oh, pardon my language. We would have messed it up just like disability insurance, and we
Sure.
would have required proof, ongoing proof, and you'd have to submit receipts to
Yeah.
prove what these expenses are for. And no, no, no. Dr. Barnard said, listen, the reason we need this money is to allow these patients to recover in the best means possible for them. And who are we to judge what the best way
Hmm.
for them to recover is? Maybe
Sure.
it is to jump the line and go somewhere else. Maybe it's to have a loved one sitting by their bedside while they are recovering, and that individual can't take time off for free in order to take care of them. So this money could be used to help subsidize their lifestyle, or it could pay for a nanny, or it could pay for a home to be retrofitted, anything to make the recovery better, to reduce stress, to reduce financial burdens so that people can recover quicker. Like that was in a nutshell why he did it, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing, Sean, is that if people go do the homework and it changes so quickly, so I haven't got the latest ones, but each province has approved certain, talk about cancer, certain cancer drugs. There may be, let's say, give you a number, 25 across Canada, but each province only authorizes certain ones. And I've heard firsthand where someone's been diagnosed and they say, okay, this is the treatment I can offer you, but two doors down, and to your point, here in Ontario, two doors down, we've got an experimental drug. It's not covered by OHIP. If you got the means, we can get you on it right away and has a great success, but it's not covered by OHIP. If they don't have the means to do it, that's even here in your, that's without going across the border or across the province. It's right here in your home, but you have the funds to do it.
So, speaking of getting the funds, Desjardins has a great suite of products to help Canadians in this area. Can you tell me, like, what are some of the unique features of your product that stand out and that our agents who are selling Desjardins can really benefit from when they're talking to their clients about the offering?
Sure, absolutely. I'll actually go back a little bit first, if I may, Sean, talk about, something that you may have heard of, our good friends at CLHIA and their benchmark definitions that they've set forth. The probably the drastic change was the ones they did in 2013. And if you don't know anything about this, do a little homework, but to give you a short version is they got a task force together in 2013 of the top of the top living benefits, people from all the carriers, and they wanted to review the CI definitions. Were they relevant? Were they up to date? There've been advances in treatment, in medicine, and they felt they didn't resonate, where they were. So they made changes to 8 of the definitions. The biggest one that we all know now is they changed the cancer definition. They went from cancer to cancer life-threatening, which meant any carrier that adopted those 2013 benchmark definitions would cover life-threatening cancer only. So if you Google actually and look up, when each carrier did, you can see different carriers. Some did it in 2014, some in 2015. Desjardins waited back a little bit, watched what the other carriers did, and decided to make the jump in 2018, 5 years later. But what we did was something revolutionary. We worked with our reinsurer and we designed a plan that not only covered life-threatening cancers, but covered non-life-threatening cancers as well. Now, we don't cover the full amount, the 100%. We cover a percentage. We actually have what I call 15% buckets that the client could fall into, if you will. I use that term buckets, where they could get 15% of the benefit as an advance, and then the other 85% sits there if they need it, or if not, they get return of premium, obviously less the claim. So it meant as of 2018, Desjardins, and still to this day now in 2023, is the only carrier in Canada that covers all types of cancers, whether it's life-threatening or non-life-threatening. We also added 4 unique cardiovascular conditions and procedures as well, things like insertion of a pacemaker, insertion of defibrillator, aortic aneurysm, which is a big thing. And so coupled with that, we basically put out this phenomenal package that still, as I said, to this day, here we are 6 years later, nobody's touched. Nobody's been able to emulate. So it's just a phenomenal package. We have the 25 core conditions. We also cover long-term care, or what's called loss of independent existence. We have that as one of our coverages as well. So it really is a true comprehensive package. The reality is, I say to advisors, you can obviously deal with whichever carrier you want. My concern is you have a conversation, you put your client with a carrier that doesn't have all cancers covered. All the client hears is cancers covered. They don't know what's life-threatening, non-life-threatening, all this stuff. But when the call comes in and they say, I've got cancer, it's treatable, it's curable, which is fantastic. That's awesome news. Or we only cover life-threatening. But you told me we cover cancers. Well, we do, but only life-threatening. That's a little bit of a tough conversation, right? Whereas if they have a Desjardins policy, health priorities, as we call it, okay, yes, you're going to have some coverage. Let me go find out if it falls in the 15% bucket, we have a 30% bucket, and we have a 100% bucket. So which ones are going to fall in? So you can at least feel that confidence. Yes, there's coverage. Let me go find it. Let me call my Desjardins contact, which obviously for Experience is myself and Kathy, and we can find out how much their quality, which bucket they fall into. So it's phenomenal.
So that's interesting. If they're selling the Desjardins product, what they can say, correct me if I'm wrong, but the language they could use is, listen, this covers you for all kinds of cancer. The more life-threatening that cancer is, the greater the payout. So if it's not life-threatening, you might only get a 15% payout, which will still help you with your recovery. If it's a little more life-threatening, it might be 30% or all the way up to 100% of that benefit being paid out, whereas other carriers would only pay out if it's a really life-threatening illness. Is that correct?
That's correct, but I will qualify. All carriers cover early stage breast cancer to some degree, so they do cover that. So I want to qualify for that. So which is awesome, because I'm sure if you look at, like with us, with all carriers, for female clients, the highest payout is for breast cancer, and for male is for prostate cancer. So no surprise, I'm sure. So they do cover that early stage. But the term you want to unfortunately get familiar with is called carcinoma in situ. Carcinoma in situ is early stage cancer. And yes, it does happen in the breast, but it also happens in the kidney, in the liver, in the prostate, all over the body. So with Desjardins, when you have this early stage cancer or carcinoma in situ of the whatever organ, we would cover that under the 15% bucket. The 30%, just to let you guys know, is for a mastectomy or a prostatectomy. So that's total removal of one or both breasts to stop the spread, or removal of the prostate. That's where the 30% bucket sits in there. So again,
and obviously a little more invasive. You're going to need more time to
absolutely,
recover from
yeah,
it. So
yeah,
obviously that's why they're having a higher payout. Okay, that's
yeah.
great. Another thing I've realized, and we were talking about this recently, that is that a lot of advisors don't see or don't talk about an incredible benefit that's included with pretty much every critical illness insurance product out there in the marketplace in one form or another. And certainly some are better than others. And what I'm talking about are these second opinion services, whether it's Best Doctors or Teladoc or Advanced Medical, whatever it happens to be.
Sure,
They're a
sure.
second opinion service that allows the patient, the client, to get a second opinion, from their physician. And I've seen this on countless occasions lead to not only a different diagnosis, but different physicians being recommended for the procedure in one case in particular, which was astounding. And I just remember the parent when he told me, when the father told me that he had gone through this process and he had received two separate 20-page documents from the second opinion service from two different physicians in different parts of the world who both said, yes, we agree with the treatment recommendation for your daughter. We agree on the diagnosis. And both coincidentally agreed that one particular doctor should be the physician, the surgeon dealing with the daughter. Now, dad didn't have this surgeon lined up to do the surgery.
Mm,
What do you think he did? He
yeah,
went out of his way and moved mountains to make sure that
absolutely.
his daughter got that physician, that surgeon to do the surgery. He wouldn't have been able to do this without that report. And he told me the peace of mind that it gave him from these two separate specialists in the world coming in and saying you should do this and do this and this is who you should do it with, like the peace of mind it gave him at probably which was the hardest time in his life, watching his daughter go through a major surgery, was such a relief that the premium no longer matters. The client didn't
Absolutely.
even care about the
Yeah,
premium on this
yeah,
product. The value was incredible. So, can you tell me about your second opinion service?
absolutely. I like to actually start with telling you the story, if I may, Sean, about the situation that happened in Calgary. I think it was in 2018, 2019. I was there with a colleague for lunch and learn, and we're just about to leave. We've had the lunch, we've gone through a session, lunch and learn, and the lady says, do you guys, at the time it was called Best Doctors, it's now known as Teladoc, do you cover Best Doctors? And my colleague both and I go, yeah. Why do you guys talk about it? I go, well, if we didn't today, we apologize. And she goes, listen, can I tell you a quick story? And we're like, oh, well, we're going on to another meeting, but okay, we've got 5 minutes. Well, am I glad we stayed? And I'll tell you, give the short version of the story. You can actually go to the Teladoc website and see her story firsthand. The lady's name is Ashifa, and the last name escapes me, but I got to see her firsthand, and Shawn, I'll try and do it justice. She noticed that she was getting a lump on her neck, and she went to a doctor, a bunch of tests. This is in Calgary, and they said it's an advanced cancer or start treatment. And they said to her, this is where it gets a little bit crazy. This is going to be so intense, and because it's on your neck and it's by your face may change, like the physical features, because it's going to be so intense. So she's like, wow, that's crazy, right? It's going to be very aggressive. So about 2 or 3 days before she's due to start treatment, she sits up in bed one morning and she says, best doctors. And her husband goes, what's that? How do you dreaming about doctors? What's going on, right? She goes, no, no, we have best doctors on our policy. He goes, what's that? What's the chance to get a second opinion? And of course, the husband's very sweet. He goes, well, honey, we've had the treatment. But this goes to the ladies out there, the females who know their body better than us
Mhm.
males. And she says, I don't feel like I have cancer. Something's not right. I want a second opinion. So she put a hold on the treatment, which the Calgary hospital wasn't too happy about. But they send a blind sample off to the top cancer hospital. I believe it was in Boston, if I remember correctly. And they ran tests, and actually I think it went to also Toronto as well. They ran a bunch of tests. Anyway, short version, came back, not cancer. She was 3 days away from having treatment that her body didn't need. So here's a situation where Best Doctors Teladoc saved her life. Talk about change of diagnosis, change of treatment, all that stuff. This is where it's. And then as we're leaving from this lunch, another lady says, "I know you guys don't have time, but they also saved my son from treatment as well here in Calgary at the Children's Hospital here in Calgary." And we're like, okay, we could stay here all day listening to all these stories because they're phenomenal. Here's the bottom line. Desjardins has always seen the power in this second opinion service in that. So we've always tried to maintain a top tier service. And we made the bold move, I think it was about a year and a half ago, to partner with Teladoc and offer the best service. And what I mean by that, Shawn, is we cover the insured for this service, unlimited use.
Mm-hmm.
We cover the spouse or partner of the insured, unlimited use. We cover the children living in the insured's house that are dependent upon them. They're covered unlimited. And then we used to extend to, bear with me here, parents, brothers, and sisters of the insured, and parents, brothers, sisters of the spouse or partner once every 3 years. But now it's unlimited.
Wow.
We're the only carrier that offers it. The next closest one, I think, is once every 3 years. We offer unlimited use. But here's the crazy thing. It doesn't matter. It's worldwide coverage. So if you're, here in Ontario, mums in India or Dubai or in Africa or in Australia, wherever they are, as long as we can get their medical record, and you're right. The thing is, obviously can't speak for other provinces, but here in Ontario, you go into your doctor's office and it says limit to 2 questions or 2 issues only because they don't have the time. That's if you can get to see them these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have the time to get that second opinion. So to your example there as well, they get this beautiful report from well-renowned specialists they would never normally have access to. And sometimes the treatment's changed, sometimes the diagnosis has changed, sometimes they agree with it, but at least it gives them peace of mind.
It
gives them
agree.
that peace of mind.
And Ashifa, you said, was an advisor, correct?
She is an advisor. She was an independent advisor out in Calgary. I believe she's still practicing. But the head of Best Doctors was so moved by her story. Obviously they record a testimonial, but they flew her and her family to his private residence, I think, in the U.S., wherever that is, to spend the weekend because he wanted to hear firsthand. Let me tell you, Shawn, I've been in the business a long time. That was one of the most powerful stories. Hearing it from her, you could have heard a pin drop in the room. Everybody was just fixed on every word she was saying. I looked at my colleague and we're just like, well, we're glad we stayed for an extra 10 minutes to hear that.
I agree. Likewise, when I heard the story from my colleague about his daughter, it was so moving. And in both cases, here's the problem. In both cases, they were advisors, right? A client would never have sat up in bed and said, "Oh my gosh, Best Doctors." That would never happen, right? So it just goes to show when we're talking to clients about this product, it's so important to paint the whole picture of the value that this is providing, and not just the dollars that they're going to receive. This isn't a lottery that anybody wants to win, right?
Sure.
But should you win this unfortunate lottery, you want to talk about the value that this product has and what it can be used for to help you deal with this unfortunate circumstance when it arises. So you're going to talk about, okay, so you've received the money. What could you use the money for? What are some examples? Start planting those seeds with the client. And when you have meetings with your doctors, and if there's uncomfortable conversations with your physician, I want you to remember that you've got this second opinion service. And every year when you meet with that client, or every time you have a conversation with that client, and anything health related comes up, that's a great opportunity to remind them of the coverage that you've helped them put in place to protect against these risks, but also remind them of the different benefits that are included in these, such as these second opinion services.
And I go back to Shawn, when you're saying about hard to insure. So another situation we've been in where it's been a couple and the advisor's gone in to see them, and maybe they didn't know that one of the spouses had recently been diagnosed with something. So now they're going, okay, probably can't insure you. So now I got to go to the healthy spouse. And you're hearing things like, I wish I'd get a second opinion from my spouse, but I don't know where to turn. And then we say, well, listen, if you put a policy in place for you, the healthy spouse, at whatever amount you need, as soon as it gets approved, you have access to the second opinion for your partner. And to use your analogy, it's like they won the lottery, telling them that they have access to this service.
Mm-hmm.
You mean, and you tell world-renowned specialists, all you have to do, you qualify, you get in. Once you're approved, boom, they have access to it. What do I sign? They're in. They're like, it doesn't matter what
Absolutely.
the premium is, right?
Exactly.
So that's another way to also obviously strike up a conversation or do a sale. You come across someone's been diagnosed, tell me about the diagnosis. If you hear the words, I wish we get a second opinion, well, actually, you could.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how that works.
It's such a good point that really a lot of the opportunities are just going to come out of conversations, having
Definitely.
conversations with these individuals, asking them about stories, asking them about circumstances. If they don't have stories of their own, share some stories like you and I have just done today.
Absolutely.
We both had
Absolutely.
stories to share. I'm sure both of us could share countless stories about people that we've known in our lives who've been
Sure.
affected by these critical illnesses, right? And this is what is going to change the emotion. And it's important to understand that price is only an issue with most people in the absence of value. If they see value, they're willing to pay for it, right? So talk about the value, talk about the benefits that they get from this product, from this solution, and then the price becomes less of an issue. But to your earlier point, very first thing that you said early on was $50,000 of coverage for a doctor made the difference for him.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. As little as $25,000
Yeah.
could make a huge impact on a
Yeah.
family who's living paycheck to paycheck, right? And to your
Yeah.
earlier point, it would cost them a heck of a lot more not to have it than to actually have it should they need it, right?
Absolutely.
So teaching them how to find ways to find it within their budget to pay for this so that they can have this protection, heaven forbid, if they ever were to need it, is so critical. I've got one other question for you because this has become a big topic since I joined the organization a few months ago, and that is business owners in the
Mhm.
corporate insurance space. There's
Sure.
so many opportunities to deal with business owners because let's face it, business owners have all the same issues that
Sure.
employed individuals have, plus they've got to worry about their staff, their creditors, their
Hmm.
uh, their their um, their manufacturing partners, their employees. All of these people would be concerned if, heaven forbid, something were to happen to that business owner. So, what options, what opportunities are there in the corporate insurance space for critical illness insurance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they could get a straight corporately owned CI plan. That's one option. One of the things that Desjardins is, I would say, known for, and we designed, I think it was back in 2000, 2001, is what we call today the executive health plan, is what we call it. And basically, it's a shared ownership critical illness plan. So the ownership is shared between the corporation and the shareholder. There's three parts. There's obviously the CI, there's return premium on death, and then return premium on expiry or cancellation. So the corporation pays for the CI and the return premium on death. So obviously, if a CI event happens and they meet the definition, the CI proceeds gets paid directly to the corporation. Now, caveat here is what a lot of advisors are surprised to hear is because it's not corporately owned life insurance, it does not qualify for CDA treatment because it's under the Accident and Sickness Act. It goes straight into the corporate account. The idea, though, the funds, though, from the CI is to hire a replacement while the shareholder focuses on their health, gets better. It also buys them time if they can't come back to the organization. Do they take on a partner? Do they sell it? But again, it puts the creditors, the staff, everybody that you just said at ease because of there. Obviously, if they die, heaven forbid that happens, the death benefit at that time also goes to the corporation. And the way Desjardins does it, it's basically 25% of the face amount or premiums paid to date, whichever is higher at the time of death. The last part, which is where the corporate clients are very eager to learn more about, is if they stay healthy and they don't die in us after a 15 or 20-year timeline, that's our two timelines, they can get basically the return of premium cancellation or expiry goes back to the shareholder, and not just their portion, the corporation's portion as well.
Mhm.
And the way that works, Shawn, is obviously because it's typically paid through a number of different ways, and without obviously take up a lot of time on this session, maybe another session, is that because it's taxed along the way, is how they get it tax-free at the back end. But the other way we talk about the zinger question that to pique their interest, because I know you're probably going to ask me, well, how do you get a business client interested? This is the and I've trademarked this, so I'll take $1 for every time someone uses it. Are you interested in a strategy that systematically transfers a portion of your retained earnings into your pocket in a tax-efficient manner? So what am I asking? Are you interested in strategy? All business people love strategies. Yeah, tell me. That's why they're in business. They love strategies, right?
Especially tax strategies.
Yeah, especially tax. Yeah, transferring a portion of your retained earnings. Okay, that man I'm seeing, building my whole co. Yeah, into your pocket in a tax-efficient manner. Where do I sign? And we've seen a lot of traction. Medical people, whether it be doctors, dentists, anybody in the medical profession as well, chiropractors, anybody who owns a practice loves this. And it's really giving them a vehicle to liberate those trapped retained earnings inside their business through a CI platform. The reality is, if they do have an event, obviously it's going to pay out. They die too soon, but if not, at the back end they get to, and it really just enhances what they're doing. They maybe they were doing RSPs, TFSAs, any kind of it just adds to it. But it's another amount they can get access to, and because of the way we structure it with our actuaries, when we price it out, that mix, that balance between the shareholder and the corporation is as reflective of what CRA wants to see from a shared ownership structure as possible. So. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, we've shared so many ideas today. We've talked about, who to talk to, how to open up the conversation, how your product fits in a variety of different ways. Some of the sweet spots, whether it's the fact that you guys cover all types of cancers, you've got a great second opinion service, and you were arguably the first probably to launch this shared ownership, this split dollar CI program in Canada. I mean, and all of that, I'll also add that you and Kathy have been incredible supporters of Xcelerate Financial Group. You are our representatives across the country. You've been there for us. You've been there for our advisors. You attended and supported our convention, which we greatly appreciate. So we're very proud of this partnership, and we're really excited to continue to work with you and have a great big finish to 2023. So thank you, Micah, for all of your support. And Kathy, please pass on our thanks to Kathy as well.
Will do.
And I appreciate your time today. Were there any parting comments that you'd like to make before we head out?
Well, first of all, thank you, Shawn, for those kind words. And just like Shawn said, just talk to everybody. Let everybody know what you want to do. I talked about this today with advisors where, you hear somebody say, well, you could have helped me with that. I didn't know you had that, or I didn't know you could do that. I thought you did only this. So, take every opportunity. Don't be shy. You've studied so hard for that license. It's not, they don't just give them out there, here's one for you, here's one for you. You have to pass the test and exam. It's, what, you've got it, now make sure you talk to people. The more people, it's the power of numbers, the more people you talk to, and talk about living benefits.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Micah.
Thanks, Shawn. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Xcelerate. I have another great video right here, so check it out. And remember, Xcelerate Financial Group is about real people, real ownership, and real change. Let us help you accelerate your growth.